Welcome back. Our discussion is about improving Indonesian logistics industry, and we still have Miss Hermione Parsons. She is the Director for Supply Chain and Logistics at Victoria University. And don't forget that you can watch Revenews International through live streaming at www.cnews.com. All right, so in the first segment, we just talked about how Indonesia held the event called Asian African Conference 2015, and the issue to be brought up is about the logistics issue. So how do you see the logistics system in Indonesia, and what kind of system should Indonesia adapt to so it could adequately distribute all the goods?
Well, I think that Indonesia already has a very, very good blueprint. The industry, the government and academia have a mature relationship, and since 2007 this relationship involving committed people in industry, government and academia have created the blueprint called Sislog-Nas. And this blueprint means that the hard work has actually really been done. It was 2007 until 2012 that the plan was developed. It was endorsed in 2012, and the implementation of that plan is occurring now. And many good things have been happening in the last few years, in ports, in multimodal, in regulation, in intergovernment harmonisation. So Indonesia actually is in a great position to implement this very clear plan for the future. If I can just say as well that the partnership that Indonesia has and this mature relationship is envied by other countries across the world. Yes, it is. We as the Institute, we've worked on a number of partnership projects with different countries across the world. And this is when we first met the good people in Indonesia's peak logistics association called ALFI. And what we found is that the hard work that has been done by this cooperation and this relationship covers all of the issues. It covers infrastructure, multimodalism, regulations, capability building, and a productivity gain. So it is a comprehensive plan, short, medium, and long term. The reason I'm in Indonesia at the moment is that the institute that I'm the director of is working in partnership with ALFI, which is Indonesia's Freight Forwarders and Logistics Association, and government, various departments and peak organisations. And what we're doing is reviewing the short-term issues that were identified in this blueprint. And we're reviewing those because we know the medium and the long-term issues, the big infrastructure issues, they all continue to be there as challenges, as they are from many countries across the world. But Indonesia really is, I think, in a very, very good position to be able to implement and to be able to rapidly improve its own systems.
That is intriguing. That is intriguing because it covers all the aspects needed for the logistics industry in Indonesia. And then, well, comparing to Australia, actually, of course, it's not an apple-to-apple comparison because Australia is a continent, a big continent. It stretches from the west to the east, whereas Indonesia is an archipelago here. But then, what kind of system that should be that Australia adapt to so it could adequately distribute all the goods there?
Okay, well, as you say, Australia is a continent. It's the smallest continent in the world. And yes, we have a very large land mass. Most of our population is on the east coast and the east coast. And you might think that road and rail transport across the land is our main form of transport, and it is at the moment. But the Australian government and the Australian business community, the supply chain logistics world, is also very, very interested in coastal shipping.
Coastal shipping there?
Coastal shipping, because we are also the largest island. So if you consider that 90% of the population is actually on the eastern seaboard of Australia, within 200 kilometres of the coast, we actually have a great deal in common with Indonesia, where you have such a concentrated population in Java and in Sumatra. So coastal shipping is really important in Australia. International sea shipping is critical to connect the import and export trade to each of the capital cities. So we actually have a great deal in common with Indonesia.
Okay, in the implementation itself, what are the advantages of using coastal shipping, especially in Australia, where you have to go through all the seashore just to get it?
Well, if you think about it, a road requires a lot of money to make a road, and a railway requires land and the railway tracks, etc., the signalling, the railway stations, whereas the sea is free.
All right.
And if you consider that the conduit for the ships, the sea, means you don't need to build the railway, you don't need to build the road. What you do need to have is a good port and good landside logistics connectivity to and from that port across, say, the metropolitan areas. But the sea becomes a very effective, cost-effective for supply chain businesses. But it also has other advantages. Its shipping is the best in terms of the environment, the best mode in terms of the environment. It's better in terms of its use of energy and oil, and it also emits fewer gases and emissions. So it's seen as probably the best environmental way to proceed as well.
Okay, in terms of the cost, it is more efficient as well. But then I see that Australia has a big railway tracks from Perth to Melbourne. So is it only for passengers or maybe for the goods distribution as well?
It's for goods distribution as well. But it takes if you don't need the freight to move quickly by truck and you have enough time to go by sea, then you could go by a different mode of transport, meaning the freight could. So that the freight can move by road, by rail, by sea, and by air, of course. But if you consider each of these types or modes of transport, they're just tools. So for the industry, it's like a carpenter will have a screwdriver or a hammer. In the industry, you'll choose whether you need shipping, roll-on, roll-off, or rail, or road, or air freight. It depends on the commodity. It depends on the type of supply chain.
Okay, so it is seen as optional in Australia.
It is. It's more than optional. It's seen as desired, because the supply chain businesses the world over, logistics companies the world over, are striving for global competitiveness. And that means that companies across the world, and certainly in Indonesia as well, are all striving for the same thing. We want to reduce the costs. We want to make sure that the costs are minimized. We want to make sure that we reduce duplication and regulation. We want to try as hard as possible to make sure that we can really compete globally, so that, say, a country like Australia and a country like Indonesia can be self-sufficient in many ways, but also can export to the world and play on the world arena. And that's why logistics is so important, and it's so important that we have multimodal options, and it's so important that our supply chains allow businesses to work to their very best, to optimize their methods so that they can actually really help the countries to grow.
Okay, so we'll be talking about the regulations and the market for logistics industry, especially in Indonesia, but in the next segment. Make sure you're still with us on Revenews International. We still have one more segment for discussion. Stay with us.